The Ghost Who Never Got Her Last Dance, the Haunted Cottage series #1, presented by Absolutely Haunted. Please like, comment and subscribe. We here at Absolutely Haunted would appreciate it, thanks. It's been years since I saw her, but I'll never forget it. Most people say seeing a ghost is terrifying, and maybe it usually is. But not this time. The ghost I saw didn't scare me, she broke my heart. I rented a small cottage for the summer, tucked away in a proper southern town that leaned up against the edge of the Louisiana swamps. Those evenings on the back porch with Maisie feel like a dream now, the heavy air thick with the scent of moss and magnolia, the soft hum of cicadas drifting through the night. We'd sit there for hours, sipping wine coolers, laughing, and gossiping as the sky melted into twilight. I can still see Maisie's smile in the fading light, hear the clink of glass against wood, little pieces of a summer that slipped away far too soon. But on this particular night the rain was coming down in torrents of water. A slight chill had moved in with the storm, or so I thought. That was where the chill came from. I was soon to learn it had a whole different origin. I remember it like it was yesterday. Funny how some moments cling to you, even after 50 years have slipped through your fingers. Time fades most things, but not this. Not the scent of jasmine drifting in through the rain-washed air, delicate and sweet. Not the sound of silver bells, that bright, easy laughter echoing through the years as if it's still just beyond the next breath. Sometimes I close my eyes and it all comes rushing back, so vivid it feels like I could step right back into it, if only time would let me. I stood in the kitchen, watching lightning split across the dark sky through the window above the sink. The storm brewing outside promised to be a fierce one, the kind that shakes the walls and leaves the air humming. I reached for the tea kettle, the steady rhythm of the task calming me. But then I heard it, soft, delicate, the twinkling sound of laughter drifting from somewhere impossibly far away. My hand froze on the kettle. The sound faded almost as quickly as it came, leaving only the crackle of rain against the glass. I let out a breathless laugh, shaking my head. Just my imagination, or so I told myself. I slipped into the little family room, setting my tea on the side table before sinking into my favorite chair, a deep, weathered leather armchair with cozy wings that seemed to fold around you. The storm outside raged against the windows, flashes of lightning briefly illuminating the room in cold light. I pulled a tartan wool blanket over my legs, the weight of it familiar and comforting, and reached for my book. My hand hovered over my reading glasses when I realized I was humming, a soft, familiar tune from the 1950s. I couldn't even remember the last time I'd heard it. A strange chill crept up my spine. Why now, of all times? I barely made it through a few paragraphs before a sound tugged at the edges of my awareness, soft, distant music threading its way through the silence. My eyes lifted from the page, heart quickening as I realized it was drifting in from the central hall. Faint and ghostly, the melody curled through the air, unmistakably coming from the living room. But that was impossible, wasn't it? How long had that been playing? The question echoed in my mind as I sat frozen, listening to the faint strains of music drifting through the house. I hadn't even stepped foot in the living room today, and I certainly hadn't touched the old record player that sat beneath the front windows overlooking the porch. A chill crept down my spine as my thoughts drifted to the story Maisie had told me, about the teenager from the 1950s who used to live here, and how people still claimed to see her spirit, lingering in the shadows. A flicker of unease tightened in my chest, the kind any woman might feel when alone and confronted with something unexplained. My fingers tightened around the blanket before I carefully set it and my book aside. My heart hammered against my ribs as I rose, the quiet creak of the floorboards beneath my feet making me hesitate. Swallowing hard, I stepped into the dim central hall, each step measured and tentative. The glass French doors loomed ahead, thinly veiled by the dark beyond. My hand hovered over the cool brass handle as the faint strains of music whispered through the crack in the door, and I wasn't sure I wanted to know what lay on the other side. I glanced toward the front and back doors, both were in plain view, both securely locked. My breath hitched. If I was alone, how could the record player be playing? A shiver crawled down my spine as the soft crackle of the record filled the silence. Slowly, I crossed the hallway, the floorboards beneath my feet groaning in protest. My hand trembled as I reached the glass French doors that separated the living room from the hall. Heart pounding, I leaned in and peeked through the glass, not entirely sure I wanted to see what was waiting on the other side. I froze the moment my eyes adjusted to the dim light beyond the glass. There, standing in the middle of the living room on this wild, stormy night, was a young girl. She couldn't have been more than 18, her delicate frame wrapped in fine vintage clothing that seemed untouched by time. My breath caught in my throat. Lightning flashed behind her through the windows, casting flickering shadows across the room. She stood perfectly still, head slightly tilted, as if she'd been waiting for me. Her outfit was unmistakably from the 1950s, a flared poodle skirt swaying gently around her legs, paired with crisp white Oxford shoes and a soft pink sweater. Her long blonde hair was swept up into a high ponytail, tied with a ribbon that matched her sweater. She stood there, perfectly composed, as if she'd stepped out of a different era and into my stormy night. A chill prickled down my spine as realization settled in. This girl didn't belong here, not in this time. I knew almost instantly what I was seeing. I was looking at a ghost. She was dancing, twirling and swaying across the living room to Chantilly lace by the Big Bopper. Her skirt flared with each spin, and the soft tap of her Oxford shoes against the hardwood floor seemed to echo through time. I stayed hidden, barely daring to breathe. Somehow, I knew instinctively that this girl wasn't something to fear. If anything, I was captivated, overwhelmed with curiosity, unable to look away as she danced like a memory come to life. The music shifted as she replaced the record with another, the familiar scratch and pop of vinyl filling the air before the next song began. I scanned the room, taking it all in, and that's when I realized she wasn't alone. My little terrier, Chibby, was perched on one of the side chairs, his big brown eyes locked on the girl's every movement. His head tilted slightly, ears perked, as if he were trying to make sense of what he was seeing. I couldn't help but smile. Leave it to Chibby to befriend a ghost before I even processed what was happening. To my shock, she turned just as the scratching on the record faded and the opening chords of Good Golly Miss Molly by Little Richard filled the room. The blonde girl giggled, her ponytail bouncing as she twirled. "I love this song, Chibby," she chirped. My mouth fell open. I could have hit the floor right then and there. How in the world did she know my dog's name? Chibby, for his part, just wagged his tail like this was the most normal thing in the world. I shifted my weight from one leg to the other, and my foot brushed against a vase on the floor. It toppled with a soft clink, just loud enough to make the girl freeze mid-step. My breath hitched as her head slowly turned toward the sound. Heart hammering, I sank deeper into the shadows of the unlit hallway, pressing myself against the wall. Who knew how well a ghost could see, or if they even needed eyes at all to be aware you were watching them? I was surprised that I wasn't afraid. There was nothing frightening about this ghostly girl, just a quiet sort of sadness that clung to her. She stood still for a moment, listening, as if expecting something. When no other sound came, she drifted toward the front window, her delicate figure framed by the dim light. Through the glass beyond her, I saw the glow of headlights cutting through the pouring rain. My chest tightened. Someone was out there, waiting. And somehow, I had a strange feeling that she was making them wait, postponing what she knew would happen. "He's out there, Chibby, but he can wait," she said softly, a wistful smile touching her lips. "After all these years, I think I deserve one last dance." She glided across the room, her movements light and effortless as she changed the record one final time. The soft crackle of the needle gave way to the hauntingly sweet strains of "All I Have to Do Is Dream." A lump rose in my throat, and for reasons I couldn't explain, my eyes burned with tears. There was something so achingly beautiful, and unbearably sad, about watching her sway to a song from a lifetime that had long since slipped away. Slowly, as if guided by an unseen partner, she twirled and swayed, lost in a dance that belonged to another time. Then, just as softly as she had appeared, she was gone. The house fell into silence, the only sound the steady rhythm of rain against the windows. A low rumble pulled me from my daze, the sound of a car speeding away down the road. I stepped into the room, heart pounding, as the sound of the engine faded into the storm. And then I heard it, the sound that shattered my heart, a distant crash. The sickening twist of metal, shattering glass, a scream, thin and broken, before it was swallowed by the roar of the storm. I didn't need to ask who she was. I already knew. My cousin had told me the story the first night I moved in. Back in the 1950s, two teenagers had planned a date to the local high school dance. The boy came to pick her up on a rainy night, just like this one. He was driving too fast, the slick road unforgiving. He lost control barely past the driveway. The car overturned, and neither of them survived. A young love ended before it even had the chance to begin. Maisie had warned me that others had seen her over the years, fleeting glimpses, quiet whispers of something unresolved. Well, I guess they can add my name to that list now. But what lingers most isn't the sight of her, it's the feeling. The quiet ache of a life cut short. They never made it to the dance, and she never got her last one.